All right, just give me a heads up, anyone who our slides are coming. All right, I'm assuming. Okay, I got an actual test going on a different browser. Anyway, all right, so welcome, guys. Again, sorry for all the hassle. Yeah, it happens. Obviously, it's not the first time it happened to me. I'm hoping that you guys will understand it. So we are going very excited to present to you this presentation that we built based on all the questions we received and all the folks in this call, like have sent the questions, and also my speakers, like they and I would like to first thank you them to be a part of this call today. Shraddha and Karthik, I'm very much thankful for you guys to join me today. They also have industry experience. They have seen a lot of questions coming up from new data scientists in the field, or even the experienced data scientists in the field. So we are going to cover some of those questions on slides, right? So the agenda of the presentation that we planned is basically simple. What we do is we do the quick intro, and then this is first 10 minutes I planned, which already gone because of the different switchbacks. But then we will do 10-minute presentation from each of us. We try to cover different aspects of the career path. One is obviously ML focused data science role. The other one is being the uh, product data analytics, and then the other one is ML engineering. And Karthik will cover the ML engineering. Shrabe will cover the product data science. All right. So as I already mentioned this, I don't want to hammer it again, but the basic take home on this is right now in the market, in my experience, that I'm mentoring a lot of the folks and also seeing the job market and different job postings, regardless of title. I mean, I care really less about the titles because the titles are sometimes misleading. However, if you read the job description very clearly, you should able to be implicitly, once you read the job description, make a guess that this job particularly belongs to one of this category. Usually ML engineers are clearly defined, and there's some confusion on the first two, because they always get posted with data scientist title. And then if you read job description, if it talks about ML algorithms, mostly focus on stat side more, and then deep learning neural networks, that kind of things. If you see, it's more leaning towards the core ML data scientist. If you read about experimentation, product development, KPIs, metrics, it's going to lean towards product analytics. And then this both, I would say all three, are very, very key and important roles in an organization, right? So as you saw that in the first slide, we have three different clear verticals, and we're going to cover those verticals, each one of us to the different one. So I'll focus on the core ML. That's where I'm currently working. Sarabia will focus on product side, and Karthik will cover the MLE, right? So let's about me. I think I know most of the guys probably has seen or known me from LinkedIn, and that is why I think you guys are here joining because of our uh, broadcast messages to invite you guys. So currently working in Microsoft as a senior data scientist. My data scientist career path was not linear. It was all the ups and downs. I started as a U.S. Army, and it is a completely tangential path right at that point. Uh, I have experience working on fintech briefly. I was a data scientist. My first title was with Wells Fargo. And then I realized that cybersecurity domain is my cup of tea. I enjoy that data with passion. So I came back to working in the security industry. All right. So here, what you see is this is the I mean, at the high level, the pipeline design in any organization, there's going to be a lot of fine details, but this is as I said at the overview. If you ask someone asks me, hey, what is a 40,000 view, bird's eye view, then this will probably the one, right? And then this is some of the clear separation of responsibilities, how people at what stage of the pipeline get involved with what title for the data folks. And obviously in the real life, there is going to be overlap. I have done all three as a data scientist. So you will have to expect that you may be doing, depending on organization you are in. Startup settings, yeah, you wear multiple hats every day long. So however, keep this in mind because I wanted to highlight a couple things about how ML data scientist and product science data scientist differs, right? So when we talk about just the model building and model development, and that's not the only work data scientists do, you'll see in a little bit. So if it is all about modeling and doing more rigorous statistical analysis, and then working with engineers to put the model in production, it is more leaning towards the ML focused data scientists, like I said earlier. So it's all about how you have, like when you join the team, how the first set of responsibilities assigned to you is somewhere revolves around the model building more than anything else, right? However, if you bring metrics, KPIs, like I mentioned, and experimentation is a huge thing that I think differentiates. It's I'm not saying that the core ML data scientists don't do experimentation. They do it, but the scale of they doing versus the product data scientist doing is huge. And then this area will be covered in more detail by Shravya, so I'm not going to steal her thunder. But this is where the product data science lies. And then we will talk about technical proficiency you need for ML side. So if someone asks me, I mean, obviously there's more, but if someone asks me, hey, this what is the four quadrants that actually clearly specifies what skills I need to build, then I say programming is always required, right? It's not going to be to the level of software engineering, and this is where more programming skills matters for ML engineers, and I think Karthik will cover that in a little bit detail. However, this is where I think you need some programming for sure. Statistical analysis, obviously, machine learning, data visualization. If you do all four of this, and if your resume talks about this stuff, then you are actually uh, qualified to apply for those roles. Now, now I thought about it. How do I suggest people to build the resume and what to include in the resume versus what to not, right? So obviously your resume should not be blank like this. I was just trying to convey the message that how do you reverse engineer now? Instead of starting to put everything on the resume, take a step back and then think about the responsibilities of the job that you're applying. If it talks about ML models building, you do need Python and R, right? Or R. That's because those are the major analytical language that a lot of the companies are using. Now we go on the second stage where job description or responsibilities, your daily responsibilities on the left hand side. If it talks about data collection and making your data ready, you know, uh, and in that initial pipeline diagram, you see a lot of the times data engineers will support you on this, but then initial proof of concept or MVP development, you are involved heavily. So you need SQL. I mean, this is where I do draw a line with data scientists that hey that wanted to deny me that SQL is not for DS. Then I'll call them that's BS, right? So all right. So then we'll go on the feature engineering. So the feature engineering is important, guys, because without extracting the good features, your model is not going to be a good one, right? Uh, we all have heard about garbage in, garbage out. You have to build a good pipeline, feature store, as you saw on the pipeline diagram. Any tools will work. A lot of the companies will have their own proprietary tools. In Microsoft, we use different tools. I'm just putting Airflow because it's open source tool. Then I think if you are in the ML, the likelihood of processing very big data is high. So that means you need to learn something more than pandas. You need to learn something more than just doing, the analysis over some basic tools that gonna give up in the memory sometime. So that's when the Spark come in play. PySpark is Python flavor of it, very simple. If you know the SQL or the Python, learning curve is very, very easier. It's not steep at all. And I'm starting a learning series on this. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, obviously you'll come to know more. Data visualization, obviously, I don't want to talk too much about it. And then the ML on the cloud. This is basically most of the times when we do the projects, I have seen a lot of projects portfolios. It projects end up just being on the uh, notebook settings, right? So they are only in their notebooks. So that means we need folks to learn the cloud technology also, to at least have one or two models from your portfolio. Should be more interactive. It should be live with the endpoint on the cloud. It gives you more exposure, and your resume just becomes a little bit stronger, right? So you can be vendor agnostic, so I'm not going to say that Azure is better, but this slide is actually informational. I'm not going to deep dive here. It actually talks about different areas of the key skills you need for the ML side of data science. And then one thing I can highlight is focus on the soft skills as well. I see people always focusing on hard skills and technical skills, and they're leaving behind the storytelling, communication skills. I mean, they are important, right? Another question I have got, this I get always. I am software engineer. How do I transition to data science? I'm data analyst. How do I transition to data science? So various roles, and at the left hand side could be more tabs, but for the most part, this is what I got. What you already have is very important. These are all transferable skills. So analysis skills, SQL visualization, that data analysts have. Myself transitioning from data analyst, right? So all of those skills was coming along with me when I became data scientist. So I just had to level up on a few things, like ML algorithm piece, coding a little bit more, obviously, as compared to data analyst. I was coding mostly on the SQL side, and I started coding more on the Pandas, Python side. So this kind of slide talks about what exactly you need to make that transition, right? So, and hopefully, after you do what you need, then you can make that leap of faith to go to the data science side. All right, with that, I conclude my presentation, and I welcome Shraddha to do her part.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Shravya Madipalli. You can go to the introduction slide. Nirmal. Thank you so much for sticking with us from the Google Meet to now live. Glad to have you all here. So let me just tell a little bit about myself. I am the senior data science manager at Nextdoor. Nextdoor is a local social media company which is based on communities and neighborhoods and stuff. We are in multiple countries, but I would say it's still in the nascent stage. So before that, I was majorly working at Microsoft for 6 years. I briefly worked in eBay. I'm originally from India, Hyderabad. I actually worked as a software engineer. I'm a computer science grad. I worked as a software engineer in India before coming for my master's here in the US in the data and business school, and got into Microsoft as an intern and then full time. I started posting a ton on LinkedIn, so you could maybe find my stories about career and stuff there too. Okay, next slide, Nirma. Cool. So let's just dive into product analytics. So I am a senior design manager in the analytics area, in the product analytics area. So I want to give you all a brief introduction of what this role is about, right? So that you would understand what type of questions to ask maybe in the end. So data science product analytics. So this role involves analyzing user behavior to inform product decisions and drive business growth. Yeah, it seems very generic. So let's get into the details and the responsibilities. So analyzing user behavior to inform product decisions, what does this mean? It basically means deep dive analysis, coming up with cohort analysis, understanding your users at a really deep level to know what are the trends, how do they behave, what are the reasons behind their behavior, like and details like that, right? So those are something called deep dive analysis or state of the union analysis. We have them per quarter. Every quarter starts and we come up with for like I have a team of 7, so for every one I come up with like by talking with them and stakeholders, what is the OKR analysis that we're going to come up for this quarter, like the objective key results, right? So that's going to be like number one driving factor of a product analytics person. And what's the next most important, or I would say sometimes even more important than the analysis, is A/B testing and experimentation. If you are seeing, if you are on Instagram, if you are on Facebook, or any social media product or that you are using, not just social media, any app or product that you're using on internet, they are doing A/B testing, experimentation, like literally every minute. There are tons of A/B experiments that happen within the product. Like I can talk about, I'm in the growth space. We do for a particular area of growth like 20 experiments per week. So you can imagine the volume of the number of experiments we do. And what is an experiment for people who are not aware of it? It's literally, think of it as like you're looking at this LinkedIn live screen, there's blue everywhere, right? Imagine checking out a green screen, a blue screen, and maybe a red screen, and how many people are dropping off. So that could be an experiment, and we need a data science product analytics person to understand who are the people we want to drive send to this experiment, how do we analyze this experiment, and things like that. So that's every experimentation for you. And very, very important thing which comes under the soft skills part is actually dealing with multiple stakeholders. Data science is, I would say, one of the biggest roles that spans across all the areas: product management, designers, engineers. You're basically allowed to like interact with all of these and then choose the type of analysis, or where do you define the analysis, what questions do you want to ask in your analysis, and how do you come up with A/B experimentation to address the engineers questions, designer questions, and product manager questions. But I'd say the major stakeholder is product manager. Now, another very, very important thing is developing metrics, coming up with a North Star metric for a product launch. How do you define the success of a product? Like, let's say a LinkedIn live stream. What do you want it to be the North Star? Do you want it to be the number of people that create live streams? Do you want it to be the number of people that attend live streams? Like, what is it? And making sure you connect that North Star metric to the goal of the company, to the final goal of the product, and things like that. Yeah. So I would say the goal is basically a combination of this. Next slide, please. Okay, now coming to the key skills. So I just explained you the data analysis, deep dive analysis, right? So how do you do the deep dive analysis? Like LinkedIn, like Nirmal mentioned, SQL is like the go-to, right? So SQL, you are tested on SQL, you're interviewed on SQL, you're grilled a lot on SQL. It's about how do you come up with how fast you are in SQL and things like that. Those are what we interview, right? And Python or R, I would say most of the industry is moving towards Python. And in Python, I would say the popular one is Pandas for sure, and then scikit-learn and all, depending on how the level of data science you are. So the more junior the data scientists are, the more they are doing like dashboarding, metrics generation, A/B experimentation, and the advanced that your data science role is becoming, from mid to like senior and staff and senior staff and all, you move towards modeling, offline modeling, causal inference, and things like that. I see some questions on causal inference. We'll address them more in the question section. Okay. Now, another technical skill is A/B experimentation, statistics behind A/B experimentation, how the sample, the t-test, z-test, when to use what test, the parametric test, non-parametric test. Like I can go on about it maybe in the question section, but I would say I've actually mentioned in my LinkedIn posts about it. So please go and look at them, right? Now, data visualization, I would say the biggest and the most creative part of the data product analytics work is storytelling. And the best understanding what visualization works well for your story, for your analysis is critical, and coming up with them using multiple places. You could use Seaborn in Python to come up with visualization. You use Tableau. To be honest, most of the tech companies, especially in Silicon Valley, they give you access to multiple tools. So choose the tool and choose the right visualization for the story you want to tell. And like I mentioned, knowledge of statistical analysis and machine learning. The soft skills, I would say, is maybe you could even call them functional skills. Is understanding metrics, understanding what is the product about, what is the success of the product, how do you want to define maybe if you go after a metric that's vanity, that's not real, then you would literally tag the entire product success, right? So metrics understanding, and I'm designing the right metrics, like what's the North Star metric, what's this, secondary metrics, what are some guardrail metrics, guardrail in the sense, what do you make sure you definitely, like, revenue is not dropping or the complaints are not increasing, those are your guardrail metrics. Coming up with this entire metric ecosystem is very important, and understanding business and working with product managers here is the most important thing. Strong communication and storytelling abilities, business acumen, product sense. I think encompasses all of these, working cross functionally with and actually able to influence stakeholders. So this is almost like a chicken egg thing. You need to come up with a great analysis, great product recommendations that actually get implemented and drive results in the product. But you would get that only when you have some ability to interact with stakeholders, influence stakeholders, and get their input. So the more, it's almost like a flywheel. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more your stakeholders believe in you and trust you, and go grow up in the career ladder. The tools majorly are SQL, Python. I just mentioned some of the visualization tools, Looker, Tableau, Power BI, whatnot. Like all of them come under this. Okay. And I have a link for resume. I made a post about it, so please check that out if you are building a resume for this. Next page, please. Okay, now I want to give you a brief. I think I mentioned it to an extent, but I want to give you like a brief understanding of how. Let's take an entire year and let's condense that into one single day. What would that be for a data science product person? Deep dive analysis, I think I mentioned it multiple times. So coming up with a design document. So you basically come up with a design document. How do you want this, let's say, understanding user engagement on like maybe Instagram or Facebook, let's say. You could do multiple things there, but you want to make sure you condense the analysis to the timeline of maybe a month or 2 months or the quarter, whatever, right? And make sure you go after certain problem areas that you're tackling. So coming up with the design document that write these things down, getting an agreement of this design from the stakeholders like product managers, engineering managers, head of product, head of engineering, and once you get this agreement, then your plan is locked. This is the analysis that you're going to come up with. Now that you have this plan locked, you go and start doing the data prep work. You need to sometimes do the dirty work like cleaning, aggregating, even sometimes even building a pipeline, because using existing pipelines might be taking like days and hours, right? So and then like preparing data for the analysis, performing the analysis. The analysis part could be like not too complicated. It could be something coming up with like really curious questions and going after it. By not complicated, I mean technically, but it can also be complicated, like coming up with customer segmentation using k-means and all of that, modeling stuff too. So a combination of, depending on the problem, how you tackle the problem is going to change. So that's the deep dive analysis for you. And after that, you have A/B testing. This is another big stream of work, like I explained, designing, running, and analyzing A/B experiments. So that's going to be a big chunk of work. And the next one is meetings, talking, being in stand-ups, talking to product teams, brainstorming things. What should be the product next thing that you want to work on, and looking at retrospective, how bad the experiments were and what went wrong. What can we do in designing experiments so that we catch these issues beforehand. So I would say these are like the type of meetings you attend. And ad hoc analysis, I don't know which role will get you out of this ad hoc analysis, but definitely data science product has ad hoc analysis. Basically a request from engineer, a request for product, and like, hey, why is this dropping, can you please get me a quick understanding of why is this metric dropping. So you basically go in for 2-3 hours and get an answer for this ad hoc question and hand it to them. So those are a big chunk of work as well. And then knowledge sharing, mentoring junior people, conducting brown bag, sharing findings with the team. So yeah, that is another big stream of work. So I explained that slightly in the last point, but yeah, next slide please. Okay, so let's actually take a case study, right? I made it generic, but let's take driving product growth through data. So let's say this is the data analysis question that you have, basically you improving a user retention for a social networking feature. How do you approach this? Conduct user behavior analysis by understanding tracking. So every part of the product that you're seeing today is getting tracked. There is an event that goes to the server saying that this person clicked on this at this time, and they've done this before, and they did this after, right? So this is the tracking that engineers, that you interact with engineers to understand the tracking, and then you build an analysis document. Like I already said, you come up, you do advanced SQL, pandas, identify pain points, and finally at the end of a month, you do midpoint check-ins. I didn't mention that, but you do check-ins and finally come up with a big analysis, and you come up with product recommendations yourself as a data science product person. So you're like, hey, this is the pain point, change the way the sign in happens today, remove social logins and put email login first, things like that. That could be a product recommendation, and so on, right? Multiple things that you could add as a suggestion from your perspective based on the data, and hand it over to the product manager. Now, so this is what you do at the first go. But after you complete the analysis, you do a roadshow of presentations, what I call presentation within the team, presentation outside your DS team, to the embedded team, which has engineering, product, and design, and then you do it to the product and eng leadership. So this is where I would say majority of the work is done. But after this, you basically, the product manager and everyone takes the product recommendations and comes up with hypothesis and A/B tests based on the product recommendations. Oh, like Shravya told me to change the order of the social media login. So let me put Facebook first and LinkedIn next and Apple next, something like that. So that's an experiment you want to work on and come up with North Star metrics for that, and all of that, and evaluate the recommendation. So then come up with, do you want to ramp the feature based on the results or not? And then you'll have to do some work with working with an analytics engineer or yourself by building pipelines and dashboard to, if you ramp the feature, to track the feature, how it's performing after the launch. So, and the results of this entire thing, I'm sorry, could be user retention increasing by 15%, right? So this is the impact of the entire work that I just told you right now. And I keep getting a lot of questions about how to build resume, right? I don't know the impact. So making sure you follow through from the first step to the last step and understand what was the impact of that first step is crucial for your, growing up in the ladder. And also when you want to search jobs, knowing and advocating for yourself the type of impact that you created in your company. So that's the result. Yeah, so I think this ends here. Now, tips for aspiring product data and product analytics is, master statistics. I think I'm reiterating what Nirmal said, but understanding product metrics. This, I think, is the most important thing that people don't do enough, and I can't emphasize like how much you need to do this. Read through top companies' earning reports. Like, go to DoorDash and look at their earning report. They talk about total number of orders improved quarter over quarter, year over year, month over month. Then that tells you that, hey, total number of orders is important for DoorDash. So when I interview with DoorDash, I'm going to talk about North Star metric being, total number of orders, maybe, things like that. Not just for that, but it also gets you into habit of understanding what's happening in the ecosystem, what is important for a business, and things like that. Okay, and make a habit of reading through data science engineering blogs. I know you're all here because you read through our LinkedIn posts. Thank you so much for that. But I'd say add in reading engineering blogs, data science blogs, and how is a company solving a certain problem. That is going to give you so much more insight on how to do your work as a data science person. Or when you're trying to break into data, this is the problem that I'm going to solve, and this is the project that I'm going to work on that's similar to this engineering problem that this company has worked on. So I can't emphasize more on these two things. So stay curious, stay inquisitive, network. Good that you're here, you're networking, that's great. Network and learn, and continuously upskill, right? What is the latest trends in the data science? What are the and understand, make sure that you incorporate those tools in your current workplace, and take online courses, attend workshops like this one, and participate like in hackathons and things like that. So yeah, I think this ends my prolonged talk. Sorry if I'm fast. I wanted to make sure I cover as much information.
No, no, it's great. Thanks for going over. Yeah, Karthik, take the stage.
Cool. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining in. This is Karthik. Nirmal, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to give a bit of introduction about myself, I'm a senior machine learning engineer at Meta. I specialize in search and recommendations, mostly been working on that field for around 5 years. Nirmal, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So yeah, just to give a bit of my career journey, I came to US in 2015, started my master's in computer science from University of Minnesota, and then joined Amazon dynamic pricing team in 2017 as a software engineer actually. And then within the dynamic pricing team, I transitioned to machine learning engineer actually, and that's where I started my machine learning journey. And then in 2019, I joined Amazon Search Ads, and that's where I started falling into love with search. And then I stayed in search for a long time. And then in 2021, I joined Facebook Search as well. Next slide. Cool. Yeah. So, like my day-to-day responsibility. So it's kind of interesting, as like one of the things that you've noticed, like both Nirmal and Shavez mentioned, that as you grow more and more senior, you wear different hats across different roles. So typically, I divide a machine learning system into three big components. I think Nirmal also discussed this briefly. One is the data side of stuff, one is modeling side of stuff, and then there's one is model scaling and deployment side of stuff, right? Depending on where you want to be, eventually as you grow senior in your role, like you deal with a lot of these things across the board. So my day to day looks like I spend like around 30% of my time, for coming up with a roadmap of what kind of like model or problem space we're going to focus on. Then some time on significant chunk of my time on actually on the data analysis and model development itself. And then like of course like I make sure that the model is scalable, and then making sure to like how to deploy it, and then online experimentation, and finally deploying it. Nirmal, next slide. Cool. Yeah. So one of the questions that I get frequently, of course, is how do we transition from like a software engineer to machine learning engineer? Like how I define machine learning is kind of like a broad spectrum. So like you on one end of that spectrum, you have generalists, which are like very working on broad range of problems, and then on the other end of that spectrum is specialists. So like working on very specific niche problem, which is like for example you're a machine learning scientist in self-driving car companies, so you're working on a very niche problem. And on the other side of the spectrum, on the y-axis side, is working more on the modeling side, or you're working more on the services side. So one of the things is like what I generally like what helped me was trying to figure out where I fall into the spectrum and eventually where I want to be, and then mapping out my career step from that actually really helped me. So what I did was essentially I made sure that I joined a team which has machine learning in it. I took a pay cut actually to do that, align my career with what I want to do. And I like took time outside of my daily responsibilities to work on machine learning problems with the scientists that were already working in that team actually, and learning from them, and what understanding what their day to day looks like. And another thing that I did, which is actually I think very important if you're especially if you want to change role, is be really good at what your job is. So if your manager is happy with you, they are going to do things for you. You can demand stuff afterwards, basically. So if you're delivering all your making sure you deliver all your stuff, you are meeting your goals, then you can start asking that, hey, can I work on this problem space that I want to focus on, or hey, this I also want to work on machine learning side of things, if it's the machine learning team. So these kind of things really helped me initially. Yeah. Next slide. Cool. Yeah, I think one of the most frequent questions we had for this presentation was like building the skills and the portfolio for the machine learning engineer and the scientist itself. And like the first step, I think what I feel personally is identifying where you want to be eventually, because that's when you kind of build the steps that you need. So within that spectrum, identify first where you want to be. And like, of course, like build the fundamentals, which is like, as like, I won't go deep into that, but I think Shravan and Nirmal already discussed, like, like the ML and the statistics fundamentals and all those things. But another thing that you can do is, like, let's say if you're a student, people always ask me like how to build projects, but when they're student, one of the things that helped me was like partnering with the advisors like in their lab actually, and working with PhD students. Like I had a opportunity to work with a great advisor when I was in masters, and that's where my kind of like machine learning career started, in a way that I worked on the projects on the side with their PhD student, and eventually we had like few projects outside, which was pretty great. Uh, if you're in an industry and if you're looking to shift focus, generally the way like I suggest is like, through like dedicating like around 20% of your working time onto like, your learning, and then working on like side projects with like, like let's say machine learning scientist in your team itself. And another thing that is like kind of like very understated is like getting a mentor. Like that really helped me initially in my career. Like having a dedicated mentor who is kind of like who is invested in your career first of all, who has like like kind of like more like a friend essentially, who is guiding you and like helping you with whenever you have a blocker or anything like that. If you don't have something on that on your company, you can also find like online through like services like TopMate or something. Yeah. Cool. And yeah, once you have done all that, like let's say you're already in the industry, the next part of that is like identifying your domain of interest. As you grow more and more senior, like you specialize more and more into certain domain generally. So identifying that, like let's say, like for me, like it's search and recommendations field. For you, it can be something else. Some people like self-driving car, like computer vision, and it can be anything. So like finding that domain of interest and working on problem statements around that domain of interest is kind of critical. So like reading blogs from the companies like that is working in that domain of interest, like that would be critical essentially. You can also work on like projects from Kaggle. A lot of people tell me that they don't help. They can help, but it's just like how you do it. So if you're just doing a project, and like you mentioned that in your resume, of course that's going to be like like it's not going to generate that much buzz. But like let's say if you're demonstrating your learning, like a simple like problem like house prediction, but if you do it right and if you demonstrate that on like article, like in a Medium article or GitHub profile or something like that, those things get noticed. Like if you will see that like slowly, like when you're putting it on Medium, people will start noticing you. And like that is what then you use on your resume, like those links. And then hiring managers or recruiters can see those links and they know that, okay, yeah, this person is knows what they're talking about essentially. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think the final thing that I wanted to touch base on was like like the interviews. So there are typically like basically 4 rounds of interview, like typically 4 rounds. It can differ from company to company, but generally like it's breadth, depth, system design, and coding. So those are like the 4 core machine learning rounds. And depending on where you want to be, like your focus will be different. So for like if you're working on the more on the deployment side or the engineering side of stuff, you'll be working like you'll be preparing for more on the system design round. And machine learning breadth is critical for any kind of role, so that's kind of consistent. But like depth, like if you're more on the modeling side of stuff, you'll probably apply more on focus more on the depth. Yeah, I think that's kind of pretty much summarized in the interest of time. And yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have to give a round of applause for both of you. That is excellent presentation. Ton of information. Obviously, one thing is we cannot load everything on this 30 slides, right? So that is for clear. Uh, there is going to be a lot, and we will probably do more sessions in future. When we do more sessions in future, we're going to probably segue from covering general stuff. Right now the focus was giving you the general test of how things are for 3 different verticals, right? So maybe the future ideas that I have would be like maybe going a little bit on specialization of picking up one topics and do a drill down, right? All right. So thanks guys for sticking with us throughout the technical glitch and whatever we call it. It's okay. I'm from military background. I don't go anywhere without plan B. Plan B worked. So, but obviously not as perfect as we planned. But I think the live stream quality, as I'm hearing on the chat, is good. So I'm thinking, in between, I was able to broadcast email to everyone. I was not in the right in the beginning, but I did make sure that email actually went out to every single of one of you who signed up. So basically, nobody should have missed at least the conversation from me. So what we're gonna do next is I have actually monitored the chat when the folks were talking. So there are a few questions that I'm gonna cover, and then keep the questions coming. You guys can have a few questions coming. So depending on how much we can cover in the given time, we'll cover it. If not, obviously the goal is to uh, you know uh, come back to you from our emails, obviously, right? So all right, so I'll have some questions. What I will do is I'm gonna do a load balancer. I'll auto route it to Shrabe or Karthik, depending on where this question fits, because I get a general idea: is it ML related or product related or ML related, ML data science, right? So I'll take myself if it is, and then I'll ask a second thought where I need it. Okay. So the first question I saw was, does data engineer does not support us data scientists, right? I mean, that's a good question, right? So they do support us. What I meant on that slide, I think it was, if it was coming from that slide, then uh, they are very busy with multiple projects. We have to keep in mind that I'm a data scientist working on one project. That's not the only data engineering project the organization has, right? The job is to make sure the pipeline is running up and stream all the time, 24 hours. You know, they got a lot of other monitoring tasks, a lot of other engineering tasks. So right away, your acts may not come to their queue. And then are you going to consider that as a blocker for you to build at least a proof of concept to showcase to your business partner that you can solve this problem with the ML? If you are going to wait for that, then yeah, you're going to wait longer, right? And that's not the right strategy. So if you have some data engineering skills, you can plumb something together, get the at least data required, that even the sample data you need, right? And then you can start doing the EDA, building the POC and all. Once you convince that there is a ML solution can help, and that's when I think, I mean, even the management and your leadership will focus more on having the dedicated engineering staff, right, resource to go on the project. So that is what the other question I had is Azure versus AWS. I'm not going to speak on this question, guys. As I said, you have to be cloud agnostic. Learning doesn't really matter if you pick up the skill in Power BI versus Tableau, Azure versus AWS, or Google Cloud. So I think technically a lot of the things, once you learn one way, the way it is set up in the cloud is similar. I did a lot of ML in Amazon SageMaker when I was in VMware. Then I came to Microsoft again. I started doing a lot of ML in the Azure machine learning. Things are different just by name or the setup. I mean, the way the functionality works, almost similar. So you're not gonna, you'll be okay. You'll pick up pretty fast. So this question, I think I will hand it over to Shrabbya. Someone asked about how to develop casual inference skills.
Yeah, the causal inference. Causal inference is
Causal, yeah, sorry.
yeah, no problem. So, causal inference is basically for the people who do not know. If you cannot experiment a certain thing, you basically need to understand the cause and effect of that thing by coming up with a synthetic control and a synthetic treatment. For example, if you want to understand the impact of a unsubscribe, email unsubscribe of someone, you basically can't do an experiment on it where you do not allow people to unsubscribe, because that's beyond, like, it's illegal. So how do you understand the effect of an unsubscribe on a person's engagement on the platform? Would they anyway come and engage because they don't use email, or are they engaging majorly from email, and if they unsubscribe they're not going to come to the platform? and how many users in our platform get affected. So that's causal inference. Now, how do we understand this? To be honest, there are tons of courses. Coursera has a causal inference course, multiple. Every learning platform you choose, edX, Coursera, all of them has a causal inference course. But as an entry level, if when I'm hiring, I don't expect them to know causal inference, because it's hard to find causal inference problems in companies as well, because it takes a long time. It more than a deep dive analysis, it takes quarters, sometimes even multiple quarters, to like properly give a solution, and sometimes you don't even have a good solution. So do not worry about it if you're starting out, but definitely learn about it. Like go to Coursera and all these places. It is basically nothing but machine learning, like statistics models, because you need to come up with propensity scoring and matching it. This can go into like another 30 minutes or an hour discussion if I start explaining the details. But in short, that's what causal inference means, and that's where you can learn from. And you would not be expected to know about it when you start out. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Another question for you as well. I think you can probably keep it brief. I think there was enough info on the slide, but just touch upon maybe for a second, like what is business analytics versus product analytics, and how do they differ?
Yeah. So, bi- to be honest, I myself have not been in companies that have business analyst roles, but I can understand based on what I've seen, like in the job description. Or maybe I can emphasize more on what a product analyst is, and you can like see a difference. So, product analyst as a role, I think, falls right in between data analyst and data science product, or data scientist, like other data science roles. And product analyst is a person who is like who is really good at understanding deep, like problem solving and deep dive analysis into the details of why something happened, what was behind it, and how to solve it, right? Another very important thing is statistics. I don't think, if I remember, business analysts do not deal with statistics, and product analysts need to be really good at statistics for experimentation. So lots of why a product feature needs to be a certain way versus the other. How do you create it, design experiments, what's the sample size, and all of that. That's product analyst for you. And academic business analyst does not have to deal with like statistics and maybe deep dive, like offline models of statistics. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So there are a few other questions. I'm going on order of submissions, right? So right roadmap to land a job for freshers, right? So this is very general, open-ended question, guys. I think it's hard. Uh, Everyone's need and the current status is different. What I usually do, this is the first thing I tell all my mentees on my mentorship calls, is the first thing to do is to find out where you are at currently. So gap analysis in the skill assessment is very important. So basically, where you at, and then what are the skills required to be in the particular role? Like you see three different types of roles, right? So you know now general idea how and which skills to ramp up if you want to prefer one versus the other. And then basically you just have to work through like which one to focus more. Just for example, data analyst, they have a heavy skill on SQL analytical mindset, and then the uh, doing experimentation, things like that. So they have to just focus on building a little bit more of ML side if they want to go into the ML side of data science. If they want to go to the product side of data science, there's a very smooth transition you can see, right? Because they already come up with those skills, heavy on those skills. So I suggest that roadmap will be very personalized to yourself, and I cannot have a template or a blueprint that I can give it to you that works for everyone, right? So just have to figure out that part, like what roadmap will work for you. There's another one question that came out. It is probably gonna go to Karthik. Anything going from traditional DS to ML engineer? What are the things to focus on? Maybe like give us top three.
Yeah, so my top three would be like to focus on like learning about deployment services. So like the like few of the like those things are of course like Azure and AWS, like AWS SageMaker, like those things. understanding about the machine learning pipeline. So, like the end-to-end machine learning system, which is starting from the data pipeline to modeling pipeline to deployment pipeline, learning about model packaging and development. So in the model packaging, there are like a lot of things like to how do you compress your model, how do you scale your model. Like there are technologies like Onyx, there are technologies like quantization. Like those would be my top three like things to learn about if you're moving towards more on the deployment side of stuff. Yeah.
Can I add more to that?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, so I have data scientists in my team that moved to machine learning engineering, and I can tell you, everyone who is listening, and not just for data science to ML, it could be from any role in data to another role in data that you aspire to. The biggest and most, I would say, successful path that I can talk about, that can tell you is be if you're in a company and you are maybe a data analyst or a business analyst and you're a data scientist, and if there is a team that is machine learning engineering team, try to understand what the team's problems are and try to see if you can solve the problem of machine learning engineers that are trying to solve within your area of data science. Maybe stretch one of the projects. Like I can talk about a feed data scientist that works in my company, right? So they basically make sure that they come up with features and if do feature engineering and understand what should go into the model of the machine learning engineer that they work with. What they did is they tried and expanded their work slightly more and intersected a lot more with machine learning engineer. So whatever machine learning engineer tasks were where data scientists like stopped working and they picked up that work, he started doing more and more of machine learning engineering work over time. In a month they did some part of like understanding how deploying works, going into the code base and looking at their code, understanding how that works, and then slightly asking, can I do this particular part of the modeling work, and can I join your meetings? And from then on they started actually taking up work of machine learning engineers 20% of their time and successfully completing it, and then moving to 50%. And once they literally started doing machine learning engineering work, we transitioned them from data scientist to machine learning engineering. So you could literally do the same thing for data analyst to data scientist and things like that, right? Whatever role you're interested in, try to incorporate that role's work in your current role in some or the other way. I would say you'll have to stretch hours. Think of it as like some sort of education. Do your work for your role and try to do extra 20% of the time the role that you want to be part of, and then build a use case for your management saying, hey, I'm already doing this, why don't you shift me to that new role? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great thought. Thanks for adding that. Sometimes you need to take initiative based on what you are planning for your career growth. If it is to go towards ML, then that needs to come out from you about your goals in the one-on-ones with managers and how do you work on that right towards it. And chances are sometimes you may not have to leave the company, right? There are the various opportunities for internal or lateral move, right?
To be
All
honest,
right,
it's harder.
so
It'll be harder, Nirmal, for outside people to get you a machine learning engineering job when you were a data scientist in your past job. So
yeah.
it's way harder. So try not to have that battle. Try to have a lesser battle within your company.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
it'll be easier for you to shift to another company.
Yes, once you build up, ramp up the skills, then going external will make sense, right? So a little
Yeah.
bit, in my opinion, I agree with that point too. All right, so next question is online course recommendation for ML. I think I will cover that on the email. I think there's going to be ton. I don't think we can list everything or talk everything here. I will have some suggestions which I will follow up on email. The other one is very popular one. Does masters is a hard requirement? If you had asked me if PhD was a hard requirement, I would have said no by confidence. But the masters, I have a mixed feeling. I would have my other speakers add their thoughts as well. On my opinion, I think it does add a value when you are, especially not for the junior roles, but if you have some experience on the other track, like you saw that different tracks can be possible to switch to data science career, right? For me, it was extremely helpful when I did masters on data science from UCST, and not because that being on the resume, but because I went through the full curriculum, right? for me myself, learning wise, it helped. And then it also opened up more opportunities. And obviously there are some roles, especially once you cross that 2 to 3 years experience barrier, some roles definitely demand that, hey, preferred masters, right? Or if you have a master's, the number of years of experience will be uh, lesser than having a bachelor, right? So same job, bachelor with 10 years experience and master with maybe like 7 years or 6 years experience. So there's a trade-off. Obviously they give a little bit of accountability for the time you spend on the school, but ultimately, bottom line, skills matter the most, uh, but it is valuable to have masters. Yeah, that's my thought. Anything you guys want to add?
For I think for me, I mean, I kind of like agree, but yeah, like what it matters is like whatever it takes for you to build a portfolio or a skill. If you're doing masters like in computer science, like general, like traditional computer science, again, that's not going to help much in terms of if you want to move towards data science goals. So like having masters like specializing in machine learning and specifically in data science, working with advisors, taking advantage of that masters, that's going to help a lot, of course. But yeah, like if it's going to be like it depends, like if you're doing that similar thing on your undergrad, then that works as well, whatever it takes basically to like learn those skills, as Nirmal said.
Yeah, I can add to it too. I did masters, but maybe I want you to ask yourself, why are you thinking of this question? And there are multiple, any new addition, any new education that you bring into your thing, you're going to learn something from it. But is it worth it or not depends on what you already have, what you already know, what you can already build with what you have, right? I personally have hired people who've done bachelors in the US, and not masters. And sorry, I suddenly saw some change. So yeah, so it's not a must. So it says masters is required, but it's not a must. But how do you make sure that you compete with a master student? Because I'm sure an application is going to get bachelor students and also master students. So what do you have in your repository of resume or in your experience that you think you can compete with a master student who's done advanced education, right? If you can show that already with maybe your experience after your bachelor's, with projects in your bachelor's, with maybe winning hackathons, then maybe you're good. So ask yourself, how do you differentiate yourself from a master's candidate? And if you can't, then maybe you think of masters. If not, then I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so moving along, we have few minutes left. As I said, I'll respond rest of the questions over the email. Let's try to cover as much as possible. This one probably goes to Karthik. Is DSA required for MLE? Right. So DSA over here means, I think, data structure and algorithms, right? So
Yeah, I think, yeah, like you'll at least face one algorithmic round traditionally in most companies for machine learning engineer, even for some, I would say like data scientists, but yeah, Nirmal and Shreya can talk more about that. But like, yeah, like you generally face at least one algorithmic round. If you are in a like going at an entry level, the algorithmic round actually increases. So generally you face two, but as you grow more and more senior, the machine learning component starts to take more of the interview rounds actually. So generally, but yeah, at least you face one round for sure, which can be either a technical screen or even a on-site round.
okay.
One thing I want to add, maybe I'll do a LinkedIn post about it at some point, is yes, today we are covering data science ML, data scientist product, and MLE, but there are also roles, guys, that fall in between these two. Very
Yeah.
interestingly, we have something called
Right.
research scientist, we have something called applied scientist, right?
Yeah.
So the more you go towards deploying a model, like imagine yourself, I'm sure like Karthik can talk about this, you are literally a software engineer, but with data science skills, right? It's more than what a software engineer does. You need to know coding, you need to know how the best practices, you need to know like everything that a software engineer knows. So you will have around. But that said, not every data science modeling person needs that. So applied science, I think, does have a coding round, but not as big as a machine learning engineering. And research data scientist also, it's the same. So the evaluation, the importance of coding rounds like uh, algorithms is going to increase more and more uh, where like more and more when you get closer to deploying models and going into production. So the more you're away from it, the less you get asked. The more you go, the roles goes close to productionizing models, the more you get asked.
Yes, absolutely true. All right, so let's go to another one. Thanks for adding that second thought. Project links on resume. I think somebody asked if it improves or uh, you know hampers the resume for ATS. I don't think it does hamper it. Uh, but the one advantage you get after adding the link will be uh, because you don't take enough space on the resume, right? So it's always better to have your resume very concise and straightforward to the point you want it to put across. So I've seen resume where people put a lot of details about the project, and then their resume space is gone, right? So to get more real estate on your resume, uh, keep it simple and concise. I suggest them to either do a GitHub repo to have a link, or even sometimes you don't really have to do on the GitHub. You can do your own portfolio, because one time sometimes you get disadvantage putting on GitHub too, because if you are not really active on GitHub, which usually we are not, right? So even if in my GitHub, if you go, the heat map doesn't tell the story really well, because I do a lot of the projects on the work than on my personal projects. So if that's the status, it's always better to have your own portfolio. There are many tools uh, out there. There are someone suggested me very cool, easy to set up tools. Like in my last career talk, I guess Sam suggested one. I'll find it and send it over the email. It takes probably like hour or so to set it up or transfer all the projects from GitHub to that, and then it looks absolutely cool with all the details and everything there. So you can save some space in the resume as well as make it very straightforward. So the other question I have is coming from multiple industry. Some person asks from pharma to data science. Some people are asking from going from electrical engineering background to that. So uh, one thing I can say is data science is a very welcoming field. It I have met people coming from so many different industries and so many different backgrounds. My best one so far has been a tattoo artist who worked in Las Vegas. She started her data analyst career in the beginning, learning everything by herself, and then switching to data science eventually. And I think that journey was phenomenal. I was just witnessing as a mentor. So compared to that case, guys, if you are thinking that hey, is electrical engineering enough? Is coming from supply chain industry or pharma industry is enough? The point to the matter is, if you're a data scientist, you're going to be working with the data, and then every industry needs data analytics, right? So data scientist is not only for tech, right? It is for every industry out there where a company wants to invest and utilize the data to eventually kind of use that to make money or advantage to the company, right? So uh, your domain knowledge that you are already bringing in is going to be extremely valuable. So if you become data scientist for pharma, then healthcare data scientist huge. I mean, it's a huge market, right? So I think you are already upper hand than being on the lower hand. So that's my opinion. Anything to add, guys? I think we'll also try to wrap it up in next 3 minutes. We went 5 minutes extra because of the initial technical glitch. We are at 9:17, so we'll wrap it up in the next 3 minutes. So whatever we can cover, we will. Any second
I
thoughts
can
to add there? Yeah,
I can add something. I think you covered definitely. But
yeah.
Nirmal, what I want to say, everyone who is here attending and that are not or looking to break into data, right? One thing that I want to say is that data and in everything related to data, every domain has it. But the industry that took it first is the tech industry, because they anyway have websites, there's tracking, and there's advanced technology. So today you see data science, data analytics, you see Facebook is big into data science, like big into data, right? And if you take an equally important product in pharma, maybe they're not as big into data science, maybe they do a lot of statistics, and I would say less into technology, because it takes a long time for other industries to get close to where tech industry today is. Like Silicon Valley, why do we call about Silicon Valley as much? Because every tech company is here, and they kind of define the cutting edge technologies, how to solve a problem in the best way possible, right? So you can imagine you having this knowledge, whatever we discussed today, and maybe you yourself doing research about the cutting edge data and how data could be utilized, and go take this knowledge and implement in your industry, wherever industry you are. If they're not collecting data, they need to collect it more, they need to use better technologies to collect the data, and if they are, they need better analysts to look at the data, better data science methodologies to get it, in a concise way to help the business, whatever business that is. So what, in short, what I'm trying to say is data is everywhere in every domain. Few domains are catching up to tech domains, tech industry, but that doesn't mean you don't have an opportunity in your area. Because of your experience of that domain, you in fact have an edge over someone who's worked in a tech area to help that domain, because having a domain knowledge is very key in coming up with insights that help that business, right? So don't consider yourself as less capable because you are like an electrical or health or something. There are going to be data problems to solve in that domain. Yeah,
Yes,
I think I can
absolutely.
end this. Yeah.
All right, guys. So we end up with that final thoughts from Sabia. There are one last question I would like to take, just because it is very important in the current trend, is the generative AI, Gen AI, LLMs, Chat GPT, whatever we call it, the impact to the DS. Very good question. Thanks for bringing that up. I do currently get involved in a lot of the projects where we are trying a lot of LLMs and Gen AI stuff. Uh, the major impact to the DS is not about cutting job or anything, right? So I do hear that, hey, AI is coming to take your job next. What are you going to do? Uh, AI is not taking job, but person using AI is, right? So I think that's very popular saying everywhere you can find. The other part I want to highlight is I really like something that Sam Altman, OpenAI CEO, he mentioned in one of his interview that everything we do is breakable in a small tax, right? So your responsibility, the tax you do, when I get a problem statement of building a ML model, I have small tax of data ingestion, small tax of feature engineering. So the whole pipeline, I have it, right, in number of tasks. And then who orchestrate that? The data scientist has to be involved to orchestrate all that task happens smoothly, with the enough feedback loops that nothing is failing, and the data is making sense. I mean, if you are doing feature engineering and you just leave it up to the AI and then build a model and put in production, I mean, good luck with that, right? So you need to have that human level of intelligence to intercept and look into how the features are being generated, and you can even actually define the logic to tell it the way you want it to do, right? So that means the data scientists now have actually more tools, or enough automated tools to actually make their project even better and bigger than it used to be. So I find it much more valuable these days, utilizing these capabilities of you know LLMs and Gen AI. There's going to be a lot of use cases. Some use cases you can even reduce the technical depth overhead, because now you're going to deal with the running the API calls rather than building everything, right? If things are set up properly and tested properly, it is gonna work for your favor than against you. So with that final thought, guys, I'm gonna wrap it up. Again, I would like to thank all my speakers here, Shrabe and Karthik. Thank you so much for your time. I'm gonna take one quick screenshot with you guys, because obviously we wanna make sure we
Also,
capture
one
this.
thing Also, one
Yes,
thing I want to end with, everyone who is still here would love to know what are your learnings, guys, and
yes,
what have you learned? Maybe questions that we didn't answer that you can ask in a LinkedIn post. Tag all of us, like Nirmal, myself, and Karthik, and maybe this could be your first LinkedIn post if you've never posted on LinkedIn.
yeah.
And we are here to, help you get some engagement. So, would love to know what are your learnings and maybe any other questions you want, and we can maybe arrange another session to get into the
Yeah,
details.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will
Yeah,
definitely.
definitely.
Yeah, go
And
for it.
also, like, definitely reach out to us on LinkedIn as well. Like, if you have questions, and we are not able to answer here, of course, like, feel free to reach out to us LinkedIn as well.
Yes, yes, definitely. These guys are also putting a lot of good contents out there. I've been following them lately as well, and follow them as well. Uh, and if you have, you know, anything about this, make a post, talk about it. Good or bad. I love the critics as well. We can improve. Uh, Basically, I wanted to do more in future for sure. And one more time, it is my apology for things didn't started well, but we didn't lose much time. We only lose maybe 5 minutes extra over there. I did have a buffer time of 5 minutes. All right, so I'll take one picture with you guys, at least my speakers here, and then we'll end this. All right, 1, 2, 3. Awesome, guys. Whoever joined, thank you so much for your time. We'll do this in future again. I'll follow up with the emails for more details. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you.